Welcome to the dungeon with Harlan and Andrew.
All right. Hi, hello. Uh-oh, I forgot to close my blinds. I have to stay in front of the light the whole time. Hello!
Hello, welcome to the dungeon. We're back, episode 3.
Episode 3. Yeah, thanks everybody for being here. And today we have a very special guest. We have my friend Hannah Lencheck, who I have been playing D&D with about as long as I've been playing D&D. So thank you for joining us on our... You're our first guest that isn't us.
First real guest.
Our first real guest, yeah. So...
No pressure. None at all.
So yeah, we're just gonna talk about running some tabletop role playing games, running some D&D. So we have a nice little structure for asking you questions. So we're just gonna jump into it if that's okay.
Yeah, hopefully it's not too awkward. And if you have questions in the chat, we will take those questions if we have time at the end. So keep your questions in mind, or if you can't wait, you can ask your question and just put it in like all caps so it's easy to find if we want to try to find your question.
Yeah, throw them in. I'll be watching, so throw them in.
Okay,
get those questions in the chat.
Cool. So I guess right off the bat, what is your history with tabletop role-playing games?
Yeah. I have been playing for a few years now. I started playing in Harlan's homebrew world campaign that has been running for 2.5 years, almost 2.5 to 3.
Yeah, it'll be 3 in October. So yeah, it's like halfway.
That was the first time I ever played it in a D&D game, and it's 5th edition, so like sort of classic D&D, but in this beautiful homebrew world that Harlan built. I would say like probably within 6 months to a year after playing in Harlan's game, I was approached by a friend locally, because Harlan's game is online, lots of folks who live in different states, about playing in an in-person game weekly. And so then I picked up on that game and play in a weekly Fate game, which is a different system than D&D, but it's still a tabletop RPG. And actually just finished that campaign in the last few months, which is like felt really perplexing and wild. And we all just started a new campaign in like a few weeks after that.
Wow. How long had it been running?
About 1.5 years.
Dang.
Yeah, I think like 1.5 years to 2 years. And it was a weekly game for that whole time. So like we missed a few sessions here and there, but by and large played weekly for anywhere from 2 to 3.5 hours. So big time investment, like big arcs that got finished out, which was like very dramatic and like, oh my God, I don't even know what to do now that these characters are gone.
Yeah.
But and then also in the last 6 months or so have started, I think 6 months, almost a year now, maybe. I clearly have no sense of time. I think interviews like I don't know when things happen. But I started DMing a game that meets bi-weekly for a few different folks that also uses the Fate system, but runs in a homebrew world. So.
Nice. I'm not familiar with Fate. Is it a fantasy game?
It is. It's nice. Fate actually doesn't come with a pre-built world in the way that like 5e uses Forgotten Realms or that D&D in general does. So you can use it in any sort of setting, but I think a lot of the mechanics feel familiar to people who have played Dungeons and Dragons, and that there's dice rolling, you have modifiers, but rather than the way that D&D like really clearly structures out classes and has like defined spells, Fate leaves a lot more of that up to just general skills, and you can customize it a lot. So you can like find additional Fate materials that let you use specific things if you want more guidance, but then I think a lot of people use it just to be like, we're going to do some weird stuff. Things are going to get weird.
Nice. I'll have to check that out. That sounds cool.
Yeah, I've listened to, or like watched a couple of people play it and seen it on a couple of shows, and it seems really flexible. Like, it's there are crunchier RPGs than D&T, but it seems less crunchy than D&T. It's just like there's a lot of room for both the players to kind of take hold of how things happen, or the DM take hold, right? Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. I could talk about this for hours, and I won't. But
No, that's what we're here for. Do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Fate is so much more flexible, and I think there's pros and cons to that. Like, I really appreciated starting as a player with D&D because it felt helpful to have like, here is your spell list, and you can do these things, and that's like, it's great in that it gives you some helpful boundaries. And as a person who likes to like feel like I know what I'm doing a little bit, like having those resources was really useful. But as a DM, having the flexibility of Fate to like let players try things out, and give myself flexibility as a DM to be like, you can roll any of these skills to see if that thing works, and I don't have to worry about keeping track as much of players' classes and like what their skills and abilities are. It was super nice.
Cool. That's awesome.
That sounds very cool. What kind of dice system is it?
It's 4d6 for every roll.
Whoa.
And there is a success ladder. Yeah, so many dice rolls. Like the like dice person in me loves it because it's just like every 10 minutes you're like, and now I roll all the dice I have.
It feels so good to roll a pot, just like the big old handful of dice and shake them and roll. Yeah.
It's satisfying. So there are Fate dice, but you can also just use d6s. And it's 1s and 2s are a -1, 3s and 4s are a 0, and 5s and 6s are a +1. So you roll those, add your modifier, and then success happens on a scale. So it's like a -2 to 8 scale, where a -2 is like, oh god, everything went badly, and an 8 is like incredible, legendary, epic. And then you've got like the in-betweens where it's like, oh, a 2 is average, a 4 is like good, 6 is like, you did it, you definitely did.
Yeah, nice.
That
sounds awesome. I'll definitely check that out. Very cool.
Yeah, I like that. I think that when I've heard you talk about it, just like other people talk about it before, it's interesting to hear how much freedom like it gives you to kind of like run away with what happens. So that's cool. Yeah.
I've been playing a bunch of the Free League games. They also use the D6 system, but in those, any 6 is a success, so the players get successes like crazy, which is kind of it's fun because it's like, in contrast to D&D, it's a lot of the players getting what they want, and so it's definitely trickier to DM because the odds of them hitting those 6s are pretty high.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of it's like improv or something, where it's like, yes, and you can do that. Yes. Yes, and you can. It's kind of rare for people to fail in those, but yeah, you roll big. You'll roll like 10 d6s in those games. It's crazy.
Wow, I would do that in a heartbeat.
So
and then we would have so many more dice in our house, and my family would be like, "But why though? Stop buying dice. They're life saving."
Yeah, but I am with you. Like, it just, I love that big old pile of dice. Like, especially when systems ask you to roll so many consistently. Like, shake feels good. I can't get over that. Yeah.
Totally.
It really does. And I think it's also satisfying. I was thinking about this the other day. In the game that I run, I have a friend who's guesting right now for a few sessions, and she's never played any games before. She's never played any tabletop RPGs. And I was like, oh, do you have dice? And she was like, no, I don't have dice in my house. And I was like, no, that's fair. That's a normal response. Would you like to pick some dice out to take with you? I feel like it's also important to say we are also coworkers, which is why we were in person in this setting, like taking COVID seriously. But yeah, I don't know. She got to like pick through the dice and take 4 home that like felt good to her, and I was like, oh,
nice. That's awesome.
Interaction.
Yeah, it's fun to have dice lore like that, just like the little beginning. I know. I now have gone from like, I don't ever like. I was the same way. I was like, I don't have dice. Like I even when I started playing too, I just had 1 pair of dice, and I was like, why do you need more than 1 pair of dice? And then the hook got a hold of me of loving to consume items and own them and collect them. And now it's like rare for me to not have dice on me. I like keep a set in like my backpack because I'm just
You
like,
never
I don't
know.
know. It's fun. Yeah.
That is very right
It
at the
is.
start of COVID. I was on a weekend trip to Cincinnati, and I was getting a tattoo, which actually was a tattoo for a D&D character. And I just happened to have a bunch of dice in my bag, and the person who was tattooing me, we got to talking, and it turned out that he collected dice, not related to D&D, but in general. And I was like, oh, this works out great. I have dice in my bag that like I don't really need, and so like when we finish up, you just take some dice. And
Oh,
yeah,
I love that idea of like spreading little, like just not sets or anything, but just like putting a dice here and there throughout the world. That's fun.
Nice. I love that. If I can ask, what is your tattoo? Your character related tattoo?
Yeah, I have two. So I have a tattoo for a character that died in Harlan's campaign.
Yeah,
last
this
year.
one. We talked about that last
Oh yeah.
dungeon episode about our matching tattoo that we got. Because Andrew asked me about her. I can't even like best trap or something. We were like rolling on the random table. And I was like, well, the worst thing I've ever done in a D&D game is trick my friend in real life. Like use your real life interests against you to with the character. Yeah.
That was so deep that I also it was so well planted that I, as like a real human in the world, didn't know it until later, and I was like, no, that's not fair. Come on.
Yeah.
But yes, I do have that, and then I also have a little rose for the character that I played in the Fate campaign that lasted and just ended this year, who was like a scrappy human child who like was very impulsive and was enlisted by a local mob to do like low level street shrimp work of like bringing back information. And yeah, the like mob that I was enlisted by was called the Black Rose. So
Nice.
I got
Nice. So cool.
That's
I
so
love
cool.
it.
Yeah, wait, Hannah, someone in the chat just said that they subscribe to a set per character rule with dice.
Yeah.
And you were just talking about what you did after your character in our game died. Will you just talk about that real quick?
Yeah, I retired the dice. I was telling Harlan and Andrew that I busted into the dice set from that today to pull the D20 for this when they asked me like, can you pull up a dice? I was like, yeah, I can do that. But yeah, when that character died, their dice they got retired. It was too close to my heart. It was the first character I ever played. It was the first set of dice I ever bought, and it was funny because like my partner and I were initially sharing dice, and it was like this moment of admitting how much I liked D&D, where after we'd been playing for about 6 months or so, I was like, so I like, how would you feel if we got our own dice? We didn't share. So I don't know. They felt personal. So they're in a jar on a shelf, and they don't get used.
That's amazing. But you're busting them out for this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think I already know the answer to this because Harlan has told me. But just for my own curiosity, when you died, was there an opportunity to bring that character back, or was it just dead?
Yes and no. In the party that we were in, somebody had a revivify spell, and I was not the only character who died in that session. And the two folks who had characters who died also weren't the only people who had characters who went down. And so there was a moment where the player who had the spell had to make a really hard call between 3 players who were down. And yeah, this was like, I think one of the most beautiful DM moments that I've ever seen. So like incredible props to Harlan for this, but he gave all the players a chance to build out a moment that had happened at some point in the past, where if our characters had wishes about what would happen to them if they went down, that like they could have conveyed that to characters. And the character that I played was in a healing order that like really didn't mess with necromancy and had like a very firm line about not operating with necromancy, about like letting death happen as a natural part of life. And so I think like, yes, there is a way that I could have been revived, but also like no, and that character would not have felt
Nice.
okay about that. So.
Cool.
It was
That's very
incredible.
cool.
I mean, just to like dig in the, since we're here to talk about DMing too, like I didn't fully plan for this to be as deadly of a fight as it was. I mean, I expected it to be a hard fight, but there was just like a bunch of elements, and it just got real bad real quick. And the person who could cast Revivify, who was also Hannah's real life partner, so it was part like a very funny meta part of this moment was like he only had 2 Revivify spells and 3 people were dead. And so he like was like frozen in this moment where it just like was clear to everyone that he had to choose. And I was like, oh, I can't, like, we don't want to stop and talk about this in real life. And I don't want to like decide. None of us want to decide. So literally that was like a thing I pulled out of nowhere to avoid anyone having to be the sole decision maker, so that we could, RP it. We could do this campfire scene, which is a thing I highly recommend flashback scenes as a way to help give your players agency. So
That's so cool.
yeah.
It was really good. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, well, speaking of Juniper, Andrew, do you want to do a dice table? Should we jump to some random
let's
questions?
get into this. So yeah, just roll a d20, and then we got all kinds of questions.
15.
15. Oh, okay. When you're running a game, do you have tone expectations for your players? Like, for example, do you let them use anachronisms if you're playing a fantasy game, something like that?
Oof. Oh gosh. So the game I'm running right now is the first game that I have ever run, and I think when we sat down to do session 0 and think about world building, like that felt like a really mutual process where the players were like, hey, we want you to be excited about DMing in this world. And I was like, cool, I want you to be excited about playing in it. And I think that carried over into the tone of the game a lot, and that like I don't feel like I need to tone police because I feel like we are all mutually on the same page about how we came into the world.
Nice.
Yeah, so I think like there's a mutual tone that is set by folks, and it also, I think like our game tends to volley between like some pretty lighthearted stuff where we're all clearly laughing and trying like to stay in game and not like step out and be like, that's funny, thank you for that moment, I needed that today. But then also juxtaposed with like very serious moments where it's like, oh my god, things just sort of snapped into this kind of intense moment. So,
Cool.
I hope that answers that question.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I mean, that's such a smart, easy way to kind of address it. Is just talk about it in the beginning. I'm such a huge fan of session zeros, and having people have a lot of agency about what the game looks like. Because that's a myth about DMing, right? Like people always, I think that's the thing people talk about with running different systems, is that like, oh, D&D, or the DM is kind of in charge and you all are just with it. But I don't think that's true with any game if you just talk about players' engagement. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I feel the same. I feel like, and it's, I don't know, like, I guess the thing that I want to avoid is folks having to come to the table and feel like they have to do like work. You know what I mean? Like I want players to be able to be in the moment and enjoy it. And so there is the like DM element of like, yeah, some things are built, but like I think beyond that, like as a player, my experience has been that it's really satisfying to get to be like, is this true? And people will be like, yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, it is now.
Yeah,
So,
that is such a good, hard skill to master. That's awesome.
Very cool. Cool. You want to roll again?
Yeah, roll it dice.
And do we have chat questions? We could leave a bubble at the end.
Chat, get us those questions. I think I saw one, but now's the time.
Cool.
So if you have questions for us, Hannah. Do them now. All right, what'd you get, Hannah?
6.
All right.
That's 6. Oh, this is the question that we asked Harlan in the first episode.
Oh.
What's the most fiendish trap that you've ever pulled on a player or a group of players?
Oh, oh God. Okay, I think like 2-part response. Not a lot of them, because as a person, like, I don't love to sit with that anxiety after. So not a ton, but I think maybe I'm trying to like really conjure up a good example of this. Okay, maybe the like meanest trap that I am in the process of playing right now is that
if you're listening, if you play in her game, don't listen.
Yeah.
Turn your headphones off right now.
Mute it.
Okay. The players, the game that I run currently, the players are inside of a mist that, and this is like a very homebrewed world. So they're inside of a mist that was created by a djinn who has a focus on illusion making magic that is like deeply tied to creating from the people that are interacting with it. And so they've been traversing through this mist, and they definitely didn't know that that's what was happening. And very recently in the session this week, figured it out and then had their interaction with this djinn for the first time, and are about to set this djinn free. I feel like very sure that next session they're going to make that call based on where they landed things, and there's just information that they just like don't know. And
so is this character like tricking them, or are they like, we're like, oh, we're here to help you, and they're just, I don't know, like how much is the NPC lying to them?
50%. I think
Okay.
like this djinn is definitely like giving the impression that it just wants its freedom from this vessel that it was contained within by the family like generations ago of one of the player characters. And it's like, I just want to be free. Like, I've been held captive against my will by your family, and like you owe it to me as a debt to set me free, and I'm not gonna like make a fuss once I'm free. Like, that's, you know, which is like not entirely true.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's good.
Already making a fuss.
Those half lies are such a good skill. That's awesome.
I like that. That's awesome.
All right, we got some questions in the chat now. So Hannah, how do you feel about if a player wants to perform like a heel turn, like kind of change, you know, the morality of their character, I guess, like sudden turn from.
Oh, heel like HEEL.
Yeah.
I thought HEAL, and I was like, yeah, that's in the rules.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I will say, like, as a caveat, I've not had a character do that, so I don't know how I might feel if it happened in person, but I think my gut feeling is that, like, character development is best when it's grounded in the character's backstory, values, and lived experience. And so for a character to, like, develop naturally and players to give that room to grow, instead of being like, I changed my mind, I want to play a different character. It's like, if you want to play a different character, like, cool, we can set this character aside and like you can play somebody else for a while.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's really jarring for the party members if one player just like suddenly their character is really different. So
yeah, totally.
Like, that could be chill. I have not encountered it yet, but it seems like it'd be hard.
Yeah, and I think I agree. I think it's like my favorite thing in the world. Like, both of you played me, like, you know, I'm such a sucker for, I will let you do anything if you can if you say, like, I really think this is my character's reaction, you know, or like my character, you know, if you're RPing it well, or if someone came to me on the side and was like, hey, my character is like really affected by this, so they've kind of are like gonna change in this way, like I would eat that up as a DM. I would encourage folks to let their
Totally.
characters grow.
Yeah, no, I think that's so much fun. Yes, that is like such a good way to describe that, as like people wanting to take agency with their characters and like responding to the world, like strong encouragement.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Um, okay, cool. I want to, before we go, because we're kind of getting closer to the end here. But I want you to talk about the knitting in your game that you told me about, because I think this is like, as much as it's like a cool, fun thing, it's also just like an amazing DM uh, move. I don't know. Will you tell us about what knitting is happening in your game, or has happened?
Yeah. Yes. So the way that this mist operates that they're in is that it it basically like takes them into really different realms. And again, like if you're one of my players, maybe don't be
Yeah.
listening right now, although I don't think you'll be surprised. But um, the creations that this Jin is like putting forward for these characters are very grounded in the characters themselves, and it's like pulling from the characters to then create and from the world around them. So in one of my sessions, the characters had a real panic, like had somebody tied up in a chest that was then tied up, and the local authorities showed up and were like, hey, we heard you were causing a ruckus. What's that? Who's this person? Like, we're looking for this guy. Do you have him? Is he with you? What's that chest? And they were like, no, 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 no. That chest, that's full of socks because we are socks salesmen and that's what we do. We're a family business. And they all gave the local authorities the name of one of the player characters. They were like, I'm Farron. And they were like, I am also Farron. I'm also Farron. And then the character who's actually Farron was like, come on, like, you couldn't pick a fake name. So when they got transported to the next realm, it was a yurt filled with goblins knitting that just had a banner hung across the room called Farron's Sock Company. And so they just like walk into this yurt and it's filled with a circle of goblins all just like sitting there knitting socks, who are really excited to see them and presumably are like the employees of this business that doesn't really exist, but that the characters have like willed into creation in this way. I didn't see it coming how much they would take to that, and so they've all adopted goblins, and now the goblins live with them. And in the process of trying to make a deal with this Jin about setting it free, like their only request is like, you can't murder us once we set you free, and also we want to keep the goblins that are knitting. Like, you have to keep them with us when you leave.
That's
So,
awesome.
I love that so much because that's just such a good like yes to a situation where like no one plans that stuff, but then all of a sudden you've fallen down this wormhole and you have like the players deeply care about these goblins, these knitting goblins, and it's
I have gotten several texts post session now from players that are like screenshots of things that they want to gift to their goblins. They're like, you know how in session I talked about knitting them a hat? Like, this is the image that it looks like, or like drawings that they've made of like, in the session when we put the goblin on the cat and like let it ride the cat around. Like, here's a drawing of that. Um,
That's
I
awesome.
don't I like don't know what to do with the fact that they've like very deeply adopted these NPCs who are just like adorable goblins who want to knit socks.
yeah, that's so good. I mean, that's you don't need to do anything with it because the characters gave it to you and you've run with it, and that's awesome.
I love it. Cool. Is there anything that you'd want to plug? Anything that you're working on right now?
Um, gosh, D&D wise,
Or
um,
anything?
Yeah.
oh goodness, I
Sock company? Anything?
no, I mean I feel like I can and should maybe plug like my actual real life job,
Do
which is
it.
that I work food resource center in Bloomington, Indiana, called Mother Hubbard's Cupboard, which is, and I am 100% biased when I say this, a very badass organization that works to increase access to healthy food for folks in need in our community. And unsurprisingly, with everything that's happening right now between COVID and all the racial violence that we're seeing and the protests and uprisings in response to that, there's a lot of work that we're doing right now that both includes like getting people direct access to food that they need, and also root cause work that addresses the ways that racism, poverty, and oppression are the root of hunger. So if you are interested in supporting an anti-hunger organization that does everything from getting people beautiful local produce to engaging with state legislators and federal policy, you could find us at mhcfoodpantry.org and donate.
mhcfoodpantry.org.
That's
Awesome.
it.
Yeah, we'll tweet it out after this too. So
Yeah,
if folks
we'll plug that. That's awesome.
want to look for it and want to donate or support in any way they can, do it. Y'all do it. Support the
That's super
good
cool.
work that is being done.
Cool. Well, thanks
Oh,
for
okay,
chatting
good
with us.
tonight. I had no idea.
Hey,
Cool. Is there? I think we got everything.
I think that's it. Yeah, I think
30 minutes is up.
we're
It
at-
by so fast.
Oh man, Rachel, thank you. Rachel hit us with the link. She found it and put it in the chat. Look at that.
Nice.
Hell yeah.
Perfect.
People looking out.
Cool.
Um,
Well,
yeah.
Thanks so much for being on the show, and thank you all for listening for sure. I want to give also a special shout out to Justin Hackle and Colin Madden for our theme music. They crushed it. Nice work, dudes.
Yeah. Man, I am in. Yeah, the new intro, and if you want to hear the full song that they recorded for us, we're gonna play it after we're done here. So stick around, hang out in the chat if you're real into it.
And
But
check
yeah,
out their band Native Daughters. They rule.
yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, we'll see you all next week.
Yeah. Thanks so much for joining us, Hannah. Thanks for being our first guest, and
Definitely.
thanks everyone in the chat for hanging out and watching. We'll see y'all soon. Bye.
Sweet.